But if the last 10 to 15 years of British politics have taught us anything, it's that nothing can be guaranteed, but at the same time, nothing can be ruled out.
We have really loved the range of opinion from you today. Linda says Farage shows courage, he's got guts. A big contrast with all the sneaky, spiteful, snide and rude behaviour and language of the other parties. I and others are fed up with that kind of behaviour. It's hardly attractive from people who are supposed to be showing greater character. Johnny has a question. I'll put this to Terry Stiasny, our political reporter, who's with us this afternoon. Why is Nigel Farage allowed to stand if he's resigned? Answer me this. It's a good question.
You are allowed to. I mean, people have done it before. People who, for instance, have left their parties. There's often been an argument that if you change party, you should automatically resign and cause a by-election, but only a few people have ever done it. David Davis, Conservative MP, did a similar thing where he stood down in his own seat over sort of human rights issues and the law on detention, I think it was, and then stood again. I think the other parties then didn't, really get involved in that, which may well be what happens in this instance. But you're certainly not ruled out, and it is a thing that people have done for various reasons of politics or principle at various points.
We have some major breaking news now about the Clacton by-election. I'm putting on my special, incredibly serious voice for this. We can exclusively reveal that Count Binface was en route back to Sigma 9, but he has now turned his mothership, the Alboreto, around, and we're told he's now on course for Clacton. We have spoken to the Count, who says he has never visited the constituency, but went on to say I've ruined this, but went on to say that even so, he knows it better than Nigel Farage. So if I delivered that right, it might have been moderately amusing, but I didn't, and it wasn't really, but it's absolutely not Binface's fault. So I think we know that at least one person is going to be standing against Nigel Farage in Clacton. We don't know when it is, and when will we find out, Terry Stiasny, when the by-election might be?
Probably once the writ is moved in Parliament. So whenever Reform goes ahead and does that, we should then get a date, and we will hear from, I guess the council will confirm which date it is.
Jimmo says, good afternoon, I'm no fan of Farage. I think he's a man of little substance. But for Times Radio to peddle the fact that he's part of the establishment is a joke. For a publication and a radio station whose main credo is the maintenance of the status quo, with at least two presenters who are members of the House of Lords, I think it's a bit rich. Farage is a toffee-nosed, elitist, duplicitous individual, but he's forsaken any chance of being a member of the true establishment, and you all know it. Right, I mean, let it never be said that I'm not giving a true range of opinion here. Pete says, please, please, please let all the other parties stand down in favour of Carol Vorderman. Right, I mean, what I'm really worried about is that we haven't had a thing from Al Carnes or any of his supporters. I just don't know what's going on. Let's talk to a pollster now. That is Joe Twyman. You'll know by now that Nigel Farage has announced he's resigning as MP for Clacton. He's going to fight in the by-election. We don't know when that is, but Nigel Farage is branding this as the people versus the establishment. And Joe Twyman is director of Delta Poll. Right, Joe, remind us, how are Reform doing in the polls right now?
Well, in the polls nationally, they are doing well, and they continue to do well, though there has been a slight decline in their performance over the last couple of months. And yes, they lost the Makerfield by-election and Denton and Gorton before that. They continue to lead in the polls and have done not just since the most recent set of local elections, where they did very well, but the year before that as well. So for a very long time, they've been in the lead. But that is the situation nationally. By-elections are weird and unusual in so many wonderful ways. And when we have a by-election, we talk about how it's wrong to extrapolate up and think about what that means nationally. And similarly, it's not a great idea to think of what nationally would look like in the Clacton constituency. I happen to grow up just 15 minutes from the Clacton constituency, so I know it very well. It's an area that is far more white, far older, and has far more people with fewer educational qualifications than the nation as a whole, and that lends itself to a reform type electorate. We've seen previously in the constituency that Douglas Carswell won a by-election for UKIP all those years ago, and Nigel Farage won 46% of the vote at the last election. So it certainly lends itself to reform, and I think a reform victory is the most likely outcome. But if the last 10 to 15 years of British politics have taught us anything, it's that nothing can be guaranteed, but at the same time, nothing can be ruled out.
Yes, I'm personally, I'm not the only person, I'm sure, wondering what will it prove if Nigel Farage does indeed win? Because we're back to where we started, aren't we?
I think a lot will depend on the campaign and exactly how much scrutiny his personal and financial circumstances are now, how much scrutiny those are now subjected to. Because it could be, and this is really going out on a limb, but it could be, for instance, that he holds the by-election, he wins the by-election, and yet he is then found to have broken parliamentary standards, and a recall petition has to take place, and he has to fight another by-election. I think that's unlikely, but it is technically possible. I think, however, that instead this will, he hopes, draw a line under the issues surrounding his personal behaviour, shall we say, whether that's the £5 million donations or the more recent revelations in the Times regarding his advisor George Cottrell and financing for other things. Individually, these specifics probably don't have too much of an impact on public opinion, but collectively, the cumulative effect of all of these taken as a whole could be damaging to him, and as I say, there may be more to come over the next few weeks and months.
Right, but there's been evidence, hasn't there, that reform voters, and obviously I can't speak for all of them, they bake some of this in. They don't care about the suggestions of money coming from sources that some people would regard as slightly dubious. They just like Nigel Farage, and they don't like, in particular, illegal immigration.
Well, while that's true for some Reform voters, and indeed it may be true for most Reform voters, as Reform moves away from its core base and hopes to extend beyond 15, 20, 25% in the polls to 30, 35%, the kind of numbers that you need for an election victory, then you need to bring over people who are not on quite the same wavelength. And yes, Nigel Farage does have a large number of people who view him favourably, particularly among Reform UK supporters, but he also has a large number of people nationally, more than 50% of people, who have a very unfavourable view of him. And some Reform voters, though they may be enthusiastic about Farage to a degree, may also be sceptical of his positioning around such things as the £5 million. I mean, let he who has not received a £5 million gift from a donor cast the first stone is not really an effective argument you can make, even if you're Nigel Farage.
Right, and the notion that we have reached peak reform, that there are some people who so dislike reform, and in particular Farage, that there's no way they would ever let the party win, and that frankly they'll just use tactical voting to keep them out. What do you say?
Well, that could be massively important in the unique, unusual, weird and wonderful circumstances of a by-election. At the last election he won 46% of the vote, so not a majority, pretty close to it, but not a majority. What if, for example, a person in a white suit in the mould of
Martin Bell?
Martin Bell,
yeah.
Yes, in the Tatton constituency in '97. Could remember the constituency, just couldn't remember the person's name. Yes. What if someone in a white suit in the Martin Bell mould, an anti-corruption as he presented himself at the time, a single candidate ran and all the other parties agreed to not run? What effect could that have on voting? What if, for instance, Restore UK did a very effective job of bringing over some people from the right to make a point? What damage would that do to reform? What if Labour and the Lib Dems and the other parties effectively gave the Conservatives a clear run? All this kind of strategising and tactics could have an impact on the overall result and could bring about a change, particularly as there are so many people out there, admittedly not as many in Clacton, but there are still people out there who really don't like Nigel Farage or reform.
Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much indeed. That is Joe Twyman of Delta Poll. He's actually just simply too young to remember some of the finer points of the 1997 general election. But I do remember Martin Bell in the white suit. And I remember the morning after that 97 election. I'm looking at Terry Stiasny, who probably is also too young.
I do remember.
I just remember that Martin Bell, amongst Martin Bell's backers, were David Soul from Starsky and Hutch.
Oh, that bit I'd missed.
Oh, well, I remember meeting David Soul on that morning after the election, all very peculiar.